Well, welcome back. This story is the unbelievably true life of Roy Benavidez. Parents, you may have seen this face before. You may have known this face. If you've gone to restaurants across the country, particularly famous ones that were owned by veterans, you may have seen a picture of a Special Forces Green Beret, Sergeant Major, NCO rank, with a Congressional Medal of Honor, blue ribbon around his neck. Somebody older, maybe a little more heavy set, and you'll say something, hey, thanks, Roy, that kind of stuff. It'll be a picture hung proudly as if you either enter or with a bunch of celebrities. So if you've been across the country, you've been in some of those restaurants, that was Roy Benavidez. Here's his story. This is a very shortened version of it. But for students, this is about never giving up, particularly when everyone else has, or is on the other side of something. Roy P. Benavidez was born on August 5th, 1935, near Cuero, Texas. He was a son of a Mexican-American farmer, Salvador Benavidez, and a Yaqui Native American mother, Teresa Perez. When he was 2 years old, his father died of tuberculosis, and his mother remarried. 5 years later, his mother also died from tuberculosis. Benavidez and his younger brother Roger moved to El Campo, where the grandfather, uncle, and aunt raised them along with 8 cousins. Benavidez, as a young teen, shined shoes at the local bus station, labored on farms in California and Washington, and worked at a tire shop in El Campo. He attended school sporadically, and at age 15, dropped out to work full-time to help support his family. Roy enlisted in 1952 during the Korean War into the U.S. Army. In 1959, 7 years later, he married Hilaria Coy, completed his airborne training, parachute training, and was assigned to the 82nd Airborne Division at Fort Bragg, North Carolina. He next began training for the then elite, super elite Army Special Forces. Once qualified and accepted, he became a member of the 5th Special Forces Group. In 1965, he was sent to South Vietnam as an advisor to an Army of the Republic of Vietnam infantry regiment. He stepped on a landmine during a patrol and was evacuated to the United States, where doctors at Fort Sam Houston concluded he would never walk again and began preparing his medical discharge papers. Stung by the diagnosis, as well as flag burnings and media criticisms of the U.S. military presence in Vietnam he saw on TV while he was in his hospital bed, he began an unsanctioned nightly training ritual in an attempt to redevelop his ability to walk after being told he could not, will never. Getting out of bed at night against doctor's orders, Benavidez would crawl using his elbows and chin, elbows and chin, to a wall near his bedside, and with the encouragement of his fellow patients, many of whom were permanently paralyzed and or missing limbs, he would prop himself up against the wall and attempt to lift himself unaided, starting by wiggling his toes, then his feet, and then eventually, after several months of excruciating practice that by his own admission often left him in tears, pushing himself up the wall with his ankles and legs. After over a year of hospitalization, Benavidez walked out of the hospital in July 1966 with his wife at his side, determined to return to combat in Vietnam. Despite continuing pain from his wounds, he returned to South Vietnam in January of 1968. On May 2nd, 1968, a 12-man Special Forces patrol of the U.S. Army, which included 9 Montagnard tribesmen, was surrounded by a North Vietnamese Communist infantry battalion of about 1,000 men. Benavidez heard the radio appeal for help and immediately boarded a helicopter to respond, armed only with a knife. He jumped from the helicopter carrying his medical bag and ran to help the trap patrol, surrounded by 1,000 enemy. Benavidez, quote, distinguished himself by a series of daring and extremely valorous actions. And because of his gallant choice to join voluntarily his comrades who were in critical straits, to expose himself constantly to withering enemy fire, and his refusal to be stopped despite numerous severe wounds, saved the lives of at least 8 men, end quote. At one point in the battle, a North Vietnamese soldier accosted him and stabbed him with a bayonet. Benavidez pulled it out, yanked out his own knife, and killed the North Vietnamese soldier and kept going, leaving his knife in the dead soldier's body. After the battle, he was evacuated to the base camp, examined, and thought to be dead. As he was being placed in a body bag for the dead, among the other dead in other body bags, he was suddenly recognized by a friend who called for help. A doctor came and examined him but believed Benavidez was dead. The doctor was about to zip up the body bag when Benavidez spat in his face, alerting the doctor that he was alive. The 6-hour battle had left Benavidez with 7 major gunshot wounds, 28 fragmentation holes. Both his arms were slashed by a bayonet. He had fragments in his head, scalp, shoulders, buttocks, feet, legs. His right lung was completely destroyed. And he had injuries to his mouth and back of his head from being clubbed with a rifle butt by the enemy. A bullet shot from an AK-47 had entered his back, tumbled through his organs and his body, and exited just beneath his heart. Benavidez was evacuated to Fort Sam, Houston's Brooke Army Medical Center in San Antonio, Texas. The same place he was hospitalized when he stepped on the landmine years previous. And he spent almost a year in hospitals recovering from his injuries. The Vietnam War was fought and ended in 1975, the fall of South Vietnam. In the end, America won the Cold War. But in between then, Vietnam veterans weren't looked very well. Then around 1980 and 1981, a new president came in. His name was Ronald Reagan. And noting how poorly Vietnam veterans were treated after war by the media and public, which is very different from today, President Ronald Reagan personally sought to award Roy Benavidez the Medal of Honor, which he received in 1981. Roy Benavidez died on November 29, 1998, at the age of 63 at Brooke Army Medical Center, having suffered respiratory failure and complications of his wounds as well as diabetes.
Mr. Bartosik, can you call the office, please? Mr. Bartosik, please call the office. Thank you.
His body was escorted to St. Robert Bellarmine Catholic Church, where he had married. His 3 children were married, and he attended Mass every Sunday. Over 3,000 people attended his funeral. And his body was later made available for public viewing. At this time, go to your quick assessment at Infinite Campus. You're going to need to use a dictionary, online, doesn't matter which one, to go for a few words. You grab those words, and then answer a few questions. See you in the high ground.